What's up, Baldies? It's been a while since I've uploaded, so I'm sorry about that, but we're going to get right into it. I'm going to show you guys how to calculate distance in housing. And what I mean by this is basically you can set a point, and then you can move to a different point and see how far you are from that point. So that lets you do abilities like if the player is under 5 blocks, or oh my god, under 5 blocks around you, then you can run something on them. So for example, I have an item here where if I right click like far away, nothing happens. Well, actually it teleports myself because I'm near myself. But if I go up to C3OZ here and I right click, he also gets teleported. And obviously I can do stuff to prevent myself from getting teleported, but that's just an example. And then here we have two items here. We have one for setting the target coordinates as well as getting the target coordinates. So like I right click, you can see I set the position to where I am right now. And if I move away, just kind of in one axis or axis, if I right click, you can see I'm about 3 blocks on the X. If I go over here, 3 blocks on the X, and then 2 on the Z, go up, and now I'm difference on the Y. So hopefully that makes sense, but yeah, we're gonna get right into it. Okay, so before you click off, there's a lot here. It's called HTSL. I have a full tutorial on that, but you don't technically need to know HTSL to understand it. What we're looking at here is actions in housing. So this is a global stat action. This is a chat message action. We have a conditional here with the condition checking a player stat. So yeah, hopefully this is self-explanatory. You don't technically need to know HTSL to understand what we're looking at here. I'm going to explain it anyway. All right, so before we get into the distance function, which is actually the math part, we're going to first have to set the actual coordinates that we want the target to be at. So in the item, I have it run this code. So this is outside of this code down here. This is meant to be separate. So this is in the item actions, which you can get to by holding the item, do/item, go to edit actions, and this is the code here. So first we're going to set a global stat to, or sorry, we're going to set global stat target X, Y, and Z to the player's location, X, Y, and Z, using placeholders. I also have a full guide on that. And then we're going to send a chat message and just say the target position was set to stat.global/targetx using placeholders to display these placeholders. And then we'll say X after it, we'll say the Y, and then Y after it, and then we'll say Z, and then Z after it. This obviously you don't need, but I'm just doing this for the tutorial. And now we'll get into the distance function. So the distance function, if we go to our functions, if we go to our functions menu, I created a function for distance, and here is what is inside that. So the way this works is through math, but it's relatively simple, and it's not, and I'll just go over it right now. So what we're doing is we're finding the difference between two numbers. So let's say we had the number 10 and another number 5. If we want to find the distance using our head, we can know that this is just 5, but we can actually do this with math by doing 10 minus 5, and that will give us 5. Another example is if we did 10 minus 0, that's 0, or sorry, not 0, what? That's 10, because the distance between 10 and 0 is 10. So we're doing the exact same thing in housing here. We're going to set a new stat, distance x, setting that to our global target x variable, which we set up here. We're going to decrease distance x by our current player location.x. And then here is pretty important. If we were doing this anywhere else, we might want to make sure the value is positive, because if it's negative, that can come up with some weird results. So what we're doing is checking if the number is less than 0, which if it is, we set the stat, or we change the distance x stat, we multiply it by -1. So this is the same thing as doing absolute value, basically. And we do the exact same thing, but for y. So we set a y to our target y, decrease it by our current y. If it's negative, then we'll multiply it by -1 to get the positive. Same thing for z. I'm not going to go over that one. And then just for the purpose of the tutorial, I have it print out a message. So I say the distance on all axes is the distance on the x, y, and z. Okay, so once again, we can set our location, and we can go, let's just say, like super far away, so kind of over here. We should, yeah, so you can see where we are 1 block up, and I don't know the exact x and z, but I'm pretty sure it's right there. Okay, so now we're going to get into the actual ability. So once again, what this ability does is if you're less than 5 blocks from a player on any, or on all axes, sorry, you right click and it will teleport them up. Okay, so how does that work? Well, in the item, here is the item code. I'm going to set a global stat ability x, y, and z to the player's locations. And then we're going to trigger the function ability item for all players. So that's why there's a true there. So basically just in the code /item actions, we have the global stats here, and then we trigger the function ability example for all players. Oops. And then we go here. Here's the function I created. I just called it ability example. And here is the ability example code. So this might look a little bit familiar. Instead of using the target X, we use the ability X because I just decided to use a different stat name for this. So we do the same thing, distance x, set that to our ability x, then we decrease it by our current x, do absolute value to make sure that's a positive number, do that also for the y and z, and then down here is the actual ability code. So we're going to check in a conditional to see if distance x is less than or equal to 5, as well as the distance y is less than or equal to 5, as well as the distance z is less than or equal to 5, then we'll teleport them to a custom coordinates 5 blocks above where they currently are. And these little squiggly brackets are just mean that the player is already a location. So this will be where they're standing on the x, where they're standing on the y plus 5, and then where they're standing on the z. And that's it. Now if we, again, right-click the item, they go up. Very short tutorial, very simple concept. I hope you enjoy. You can make some really cool stuff with this. The source code will be posted, as always, in the Discord. I think I'll have it under the community guide section. Join the Discord if you need help with your house, ideas, anyone, you want to talk to other creators, whatever. I want to point out that school started for me, so I'm going to have a little bit less time for stuff like this. But I do have some really cool projects I'm working on, so stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.